Good morning and good evening, everyone. Based on your time zone, welcome in Salesforce Apex R. And today we are going to talk about NodeRED, and our speaker is Stephen. So let me hand over to Stephen. Stephen.
Okay, what's the saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to NodeRED. Let me quickly go to the agenda. It's 1, 2, 3, as easy as that. First, what is NodeRED? Then a few use cases, and the last one is how to run it on Heroku. I have prepared 500 slides, so the movie won't flicker when you have 16 slides a second. And then I throw them all away and decided to mainly use demos. So, which is quite interesting because half of them might or might not work. We will see how lucky I'm in today. A little bit about myself. I live in Singapore, so it's already 10 p.m. here, so I have nothing better to do on a Saturday night than sharing my experience with the rest of the Ohana. I'm 2 years into Salesforce. I'm a program architect director, and I survived 11 years working for IBM. I do maintain currently the nodes that let NodeRED interact with Salesforce. You're going to see that a little bit more in the demo. So, what is NodeRED? Technically, NodeRED is a Node.js application, which is running on all operating systems that support Node.js. It uses the Express stack for the web, and then it provides a graphical editor for an admin and a runtime that executes what we call flows. So if you have subscribed to the idea of clicks not code, NodeRED will write it home for you. It was originally developed by the Hursley Lab of IBM. They also are the main maintainers, but today is a top-level project of the JavaScript Foundation and is liberally licensed, so you can do it for all sorts of things. It has a bit of a heritage in IoT, because in the principle of having a message and a payload, but as you will see in the example, it goes far beyond these capabilities. So the whole idea of how NodeRED works, you have an event source. We're going to go and have a look at that. That sends out a message object. You can think about this is basically a JSON payload. It can transform things and then carry on the message until it ends in an event sync. Event source, event sync. The source could be a form, a sync could be a database. We will see that in details. Inside a message, there is typically a payload, some headers, and eventual custom objects. Since the whole thing is based on JSON, it is extremely flexible. The only convention is it is always a message object. This is how NodeRED works. And the convention is that it has to have a payload that you interact with. So when you look at an individual node, it can have 0 or 1 input. It doesn't have 2, or it has to have 7. And it can have 0 or many outputs. When I say input and output, that is communicating with other nodes. You can say, whoa, what use is a node that doesn't have an input? These are nodes that obtain their input from somewhere else. For instance, a HTTP form, an MQ signal, a database query, or. And then the same thing is if a node doesn't have an output, that means it doesn't have an output for other nodes, but it could store it in a database, send it back to Salesforce, and the like. Let me just introduce you to a few of the basic nodes. Oops. The very simple one is the inject node. That's a little blue node. You can click on it, and what it does, it simply sends out a message. That is the node that we normally use when we want to try and test something out. And it can send out a timestamp, an object, a string, whatever you define. And it can send it out on startup. Like say once NodeRED starts, the inject node kicks something off. It's kind of like your auto-exec file in your operating system. It can do that on schedule or on click if you try things. The counterpart to this is the debug node, which is able to then send the debug, the result, what it receives, to a debug window or the log file. And typically, when we work interactively, we go and use the message payload. But of course, you're free to capture the complete output or just a specific variable. The second pair, interesting, and we're going to look at them live. Don't worry, let's say we get there. The first one would be an HTTP endpoint node that is basically NodeRED listening on HTTP. You specify the method and taking data in for further processing. And its correspondent part is like, say, what does the web server reply? Sending back the result. We're going to see that in action in just a minute. And then a few other nodes which you typically will use a template node that allows you to set, I get the payload, which is a JSON object. That might not be something what you want to send back. You might want to send back a HTML page. And with a template node, you can then take this JSON object and turn it into whatever you might want to do. The second one, what we typically see is a condition node. You get data in, you specify internal conditions, and then depending on the number of conditions you specify, you get the output node. The third one is the function node. It's basically you get an input of a message object, JSON object. It's expected an output of a message object, and in between you write your JavaScript function. And then last but not least, catch all, the catch node. Things go wrong from time to time, and this is basically your error handler. The whole thing gets stitched together in a wonderful graphical user interface. So you see here a screenshot of it, and I think that's the point where I stop using slides and try to show you a demo. When I say you see on the slide and 2,000 of their friends, there are literally thousands of nodes available that you can add to your program to do all sorts of interesting things. Just a little funny detail, I'm running an instance of NodeRED on a Raspberry Pi when I do IoT experiments, and I ran an instance of NodeRED on my Synology NES to do a little bit of home automation, just for the sake of fun. Okay, so let me switch to a little bit more a demo mode. So what I like to show you now is the user interface of NodeRED. So actually the admin interface of NodeRED. So, and you see the tabs where you can organize your flows. You see the canvas. So you see the canvas here. Oops. Okay, you see the canvas area. That's the area where you draw your flows, your logic. You see on the left-hand side the palette with all the different nodes are organized in categories, and we're going to scroll into that a while. You see the right-hand side, the information panel. One is the information panel. You can click on the debug panel, and then you can also look at the form panel. So that's the basic layout. And then when you look at the panels, so we have input, output, functions, social, storage, analysis, advanced one, Raspberry Pi ones, Salesforce ones, and then dashboard ones. Depending on what you have installed, you see more or less of these. And we get to the point to show you how this works in specific. When you select any of the nodes, so I select, like say, click on the timestamp here, it will show me in the information window a detail of the help, what it can do. When I double click on that, it will open up the the palette, the property editor. It says, okay, what are the properties of this inject nodes? And here is what's the payload, what's the topic, should it inject it once, should it repeat it, and all that. Depending on what node you have, you will see different properties. Building your own nodes, by the way, a little side remark, is pretty straightforward. This is all just some HTML following a certain standard. Okay, I select, instead of the information tab, I select the debug tab, because this is the first attempt. Now I said, when I click on this one, it straight away sends a message to my debug node, which is active. The thing sticks out, and it should show up here on the side a debug message. Let me try this. I click on it, and it says successfully injected, and it straight away says, yes, you got a message payload. So first demo worked. Okay, let's move on to a little bit more interesting things. I have a HTTP example. So these are actually 1, 2, 3 different forms. Here I have a node. I double click on it, and it says, I'm listening to the get command on the URL, how do you? This URL is relative to your current installation. For my demo, I'm running NodeRED on my local Mac. You could run the same thing on Heroku as well. Just to be sure that I'm not subject of a network congestion, this is for the demo I use local. So it goes and listens to the how do you URL. It then goes to a strange node called feelings. We're going to look at this in a second. And then it goes to the out part. Always, as I mentioned earlier, an HTTP in needs to have an HTTP out. So let me demo that, actually. So I click on there and said, how do you? And it says, oh, this is the mute sample application. Why try to feel good? I said, okay, let me feel good. You see on the top in the URL, there is question mark feel equals good. I can say, no, well, actually, I don't feel good. I feel bad. And then the system say, sorry to hear that you feel bad. So how is it done? I have this interesting feelings node, which is actually not a node, it's a subflow. You see on the side there's subflow. Let's have a look. I double click on it. It opens it in its own tab. It says, okay, whatever came in as an input goes to a condition node. So I look at the condition node and says, okay, it checks for the feel of the payload. So NodeRED automatically converts parameters that I have on the URL into a JSON property. And I said, if it's empty, go to number 1. If it's equal good, go to number 2. And if it's not good, go to number 3. And I could easily go and said, add another one. I said, okay, excellent. And then I would have a number 4. So I click here on done, and you see a 4th item appears here. And what also happens is the red deploy button gets activated. Said, okay, you had made a new definition. Please, you need to press the deploy button so it is sent out. But I'll stop for that for the time being. So once the decision node has run, it goes to a simple template. And this is just some pasted HTML for the instruction. More interesting is in the sorry one. It said, sorry that you feel, and there you see double curly brackets, payload.feel. That is a Mustache template. Mustache is probably one of the oldest template languages around. They use double curly brackets. So we have all sorts of double curly brackets and curly brackets hex and bang and whatever. But in Salesforce, we see a lot of them. But outside, this one is very popular, is very similar also to handlebars. Okay, this is how I get a very simple thing to do. And I said, well, Stefan, wouldn't it be better, like, if we have a bit more nicer ones? And I said, okay, I want to listen to a URL Angular, say get, and then please provide a simple form. And this is standard HTML, and then show it. So when I go and said, okay, let me listen to that Angular URL, then I have a wonderful normal file. So I said, okay, I type in here Robert Redford rr@mail.com, and then save it, and it straight away save the stuff, and I can go over it. What happened? I go there, I listen to the post. I simply said post on this URL. It renders the confirmation page. And then sends the answer back. This is all what is happening at that very moment. And I said, well, wouldn't it be nice if I could store it somewhere, not just debug it? And there I have this little gray button that is basically go to another page for me. And that's the database page. And I said, okay, here is the stuff coming in. And I'm currently just send out a message payload. You see here now, my Robert Redford is here. I said, okay, but wouldn't it be nicer if we don't have to do all this HTML stuff? It would be much better if I can really do clicks, not code. That, yeah, of course you can. One of the capabilities of NodeRED is the dashboard, and I simply have created a simple dashboard here, which has a form element. Double click on the form, and there I have first name, last name, email, and a submit button. And that form, you see the same gray button goes also to the database tab. So how does it look like? This is the NodeRED dashboard. So let me make sure that it's there. So I have the form, first name, last name. So I said, okay. Oops. Peter Parker. Spidey Mabel. And then I submit it. And actually, it straight away gives me the last submission information down here. So I can design a form on the dashboard. There's more capabilities in the dashboard. We're going to have a look at that. I said, that's nice, but I want to save it somewhere. I said, okay, fair enough. So it all happens on the database tab. And I said, yeah, I already had this little remark that these white nodes are just commons documentation, and I want to go and save that to a database. I said, okay, fair enough. Let me see what database stuff do I have there, and I only see storage, file, cloud, and tail. I would really love to have a Postgres database there. Very easy. I go to the menu, and I said, manage the palette. And in the palette, I see all the nodes that have been installed. And I can simply say, okay, I want to install another one. And then let me say Postgres. And then I see a bunch of nodes that fit there. The interesting question is you have to probably experiment a little bit or look at the NodeRED website. Which of them are really worth using? Because there are 2,000 of them. Not all of them have similar quality of code. So I usually look at them a little bit from using the most recent updates. There's the NodeRED Compute Postgres. I can click on install. And then it says, okay, make sure that you've got the licenses, and then you click on install, and it will install that database driver for you. I'm not going to do that right now. No, so old rule for demo is don't change your system too much during a demo. I'm going to use a Cloud database, or Cloud, the art is better known as CouchDB. One of my little favorite databases. One of the reasons is the creator of it was one of my IBM colleagues, and so I just drag it on the page. I connect my node to it. I double click and said, okay, where do you want to store it? I said it's an external couch database. I already have one here that is running on my local host. And then the only thing is what I need to specify is which database do I want to store it to, and what should you do, insert or remove. And I said, okay, I only want to store the payload. I'm not interested in all this other stuff. And the database, let's say, Apex hours. Okay, I say done. And then I say deploy. The little blue dot on the thing goes away, and now my database is ready for deployment. So just to show it very clearly, I go to the web UI of the database. I only have a test database. There is no Apex hours database. Okay, so now just to be sure, and then I say Thomas Tank Engine. So anybody who has little kids should laugh by now. And then I say train, I said cbs.com. And I submit it. And it tells to me Thomas Tank Engine is the last submission. And when I look in my database, so this is the moment where things usually go wrong. I refresh the page. And it actually has created a database called Apex Hours. And when I look into it, it actually has created Thomas the Tank Engine. So no code required, just a few clicks, and then it's stored in the database. So now you have to start objecting parts. Stefan, this is a session for Salesforce people. We don't care about databases. We care about Salesforce. I said, okay, fair enough. Let's look what we can do. And we see there is to-do store in Salesforce. So that's the next exercise we're going to look at. But before we do that, let me show you a few examples around Salesforce. So I'll prepare them. By the way, all of these flows are basically at the very end just a JSON file. And on the website of NodeRED, there are thousands of sample files. And if you're interested, I can make the demo items available, so you can go and play with it. So you see our Salesforce cloud all over the place. The first one, what I want to show you here, is a DML node, SQL, SOQL node. So when I look at the SOQL node, it says, okay, I want to do a test query. What connections do you want? So when I click on the connection, let me have a look. It says, okay, it has a name. It has a callback URL. You see the callback URL I was using, that was my original Heroku app. It is a production application. I use a developer org, so it's production. It has AP version 45. So if a new version of Salesforce comes out, you can freely change it to 46, 47, or you want to make a call to something that's a little older, then you can go and specify a lower number. Currently, we only do OAuth as a credential type. That's one of the things I'm contemplating. Should I add other like JWT or like say just plain username and password? One of the things important, there's a tick box, use environment variables for credentials. So the actual username and password and client secret and client password, the client ID and client secret, are stored in a environment variable. So you don't need to put it into your version control system, which would be a stupid idea. And all of the things are explained here in the site. So that's the connection. You specify it once, and all the nodes that talk to Salesforce can reuse this one. So you don't have to specify it over and over again. You do it once. and the name you specify actually is used to define the name of the environment variables. Okay, so I have a test query. So select name, ID, and then it goes and shows it to my debug window, and it actually also shows it. That's quite interesting into my dashboard. So just let's go back. So there's a button query. You see that, and there's a well people, and there's a button query. And so I can either use the debug button or I can have the UI button. So you as a you configure these flows. You probably would use the inject button, but the user would eventually just go to the dashboard, not interact with that part. So let's go to the debug window. I clear it a little bit so we can see, and then send it out. And it says successfully inject the test. And then it comes back with an object, and I see also all my last the addresses, sorry, the contacts that I was looking for. And I just queried name and the last modified date. Okay, let me clear that. Let me have a look on the UI. No, so you see in the UI is the same thing. I clear it out. I send the query again, and it comes up. So, okay, so one of the demos worked. Now I want to go and said, can't I go and add new people like you did in the database? I said, okay, that would be actually a DML operation. So I go back up. I go back to the database. I said, okay, I want to do DML. So I look, okay, there's DML. And I go and connect my output here. And then I will go and try to do a DML. Quick one. You see the pink one, the object cleaner. That's one of the little things I built a while ago. This is a node where you specify a sample layout for JSON, and the incoming stuff gets checked against the sample layout, and everything that is not in the sample layout is dropped. So you can clean up that somebody sends you fields you don't want to deal with. You can make sure that they're not there. Okay, but back to our DML. So I said, okay, what connection do you want to use? I already have one, the NodeRED, so I don't need to do a second time. And then I said, which object do you want to deal with? And I said, I want to do contact. Okay, and I want to insert that. So I'm done. And then the action is, you know that, deploy, successfully deployed. And now let's look the proof in the pudding. I'm looking at my demo arc. Let me refresh that to make sure. Okay, the recently viewed one, there is only Lauren Boyle. You might recognize her or him from the standard sample data. And now let me go to my, let me go to the UI actually. And I say, John Doe, john@doe.com, and I submit that. And it says, okay, you have submitted Mr. John Doe. And then I query my database, and John Doe shows up. Ooh. So and then let me have a look at my recent when I refresh that. And then there they go, John Doe. Woohoo! So I can, in the same way as I store things in the database first, I can then store it straight away in Salesforce. And as you've seen, the DML operation, I only had to specify what is the object, and it would take the JSON payload and send it over. So, okay, let's have a little bit more look at the Salesforce examples. So instead of like say having a UI, I can straight away say, I want to go and create Mrs. Jane Doe. So just press on it. Let me just clear the debug window. Let me click on the Jane Doe button, and it says successfully injected Jane Doe. and then it comes back with success. Let's look, is the proof in the pudding? Refresh. Yep, Jane Doe, John Doe, both are there. Okay, a little bit more what we can do around Salesforce. So we had query, SOQL. SOQL works in the same way. I also have a node that say chatter, and in the chatter node, it's quite interesting. It says, okay, it only says where do you want to connect something. The information says, okay, message payload is the message body, and parent ID would be the Salesforce object that this chatter post belongs to. If no parent ID is provided, then it will go straight away into the current user. So let me try that. So I want to post something to my own feed. So okay, always look at the debug window. I click on the post. It says injected post your own feed. Watch the chatter button for a moment. So very briefly, a little green box says connecting, and then it says injected. So let's see. Where is my? Ooh. I actually could simply go look for myself. Yep. And okay, you see here message add, and I just injected the timestamp. Huh? So it's straight away posted. But that's not fun. It would be much more fun to see when we go back to the contacts. Can I post a message to Jane or John Doe? So let's go back to the example. So I have a button that said I want to chatter post to all those. And there you see there's a little bit of more exercise there. So the first thing is I use the test button just to kick things off. Then I use SOQL query. I said get the name, the ID and the name from contact where the last name is Doe. So get all the Does. Then I use split node. I said, okay, take the results and split it into individual messages. So when I get the SOQL query back, then please go and break them into individual ones. And then for each of them, I call a function where I simply specify my my message as I would like to have it. So I say, hello, welcome to the show. Just like verify that we don't have it yet. So I open Jane and I look at the chatter and there is nothing. So I'll also, let's go and look at John. Look at the chatter, there's nothing. So now let's go and exercise this one. So, okay, fire off. It says select the injected test. If the transmission was fast enough, the two nodes lighted up for a short moment. I see in the debug window there's messages. Now let's see, is the proof in the pudding? Let me refresh the. Okay, how do you refresh that? Okay, I'll simply go to the contacts. Back. Let's look ladies first. Look at Jane, and then in the chatter I have hello Jane Doe, welcome to the show. So now I have a very easy way how I can go and post chatter updates from something that happens outside of Salesforce into whatever object I have an ID to. Okay, so was pretty straightforward. Query, DML, chatter, what else? Streaming and outbound messages. Okay, I'm going to skip the outbound message part as a demo, just show it you. But we're going to spend a little bit more time on streaming. So outbound message, that's a little bit special. because I use a standard HTTP node as a front end. I said, okay, you listen, because an outbound message is just a web service call, and a web service call is an HTTP post. Oh. So I'm just going to go and listen, and then behind that standard HTTP post is the outbound message node, and the only thing with what it does, it turns that XML that's coming in into JSON you can process using the first node, and the second node sends then back a message that says, okay, everything is fine, it's okay. That one you can't test when you're local, because your Salesforce instance will not post anything to localhost. That only works if you have a NodeRED instance running somewhere in an environment that has a public IP address and a DNS entry. That's the main reason why I'm not going to show it straight away. But let's have a look at the platform events. Okay, I labeled it platform events. Actually, stupid. It shouldn't be platform events. That should be streaming, Salesforce streaming. And you see, I can simply rename the tab. And what the developers did, they have actually rich text, so you can describe what the tab is all about. So they took quite a bit of care to make sure that you can have documentation on all the things there. Okay, I did the same thing. I have a subscribe and unsubscribe. It has a button in the UI as well. It then goes and listens, in this case, to a data change event, and then it goes and spits it out either as a debug, or it updates it into the UI. Let me just have a quick look at the UI. So I have, let's say, I call it control center, and I said, how many data change events have arrived? I can actually switch it on here and then see the latest incoming here. But just for the sake of fun, I'm going to go and subscribe here. Watch this part. You see, there is idle. It's not active. It's not listening. So I click on this, and it says it's connecting, and then it says it goes blue and says subscribe. What happened on the button? It says, oh, the button is now on. If I look back to my UI, the button is actually on. So now it starts listening to platform events. If you haven't played with platform events, they're basically like custom objects that don't survive a day. So let me go to my test on it. I already opened the developer console. I created a little helper that I call it generate platform noise, which generates just a bunch of platform events. So I say execute that. Whoop. And when I go back to my UI says, okay, there are 20 data change events came in, and that are the last incoming. Well, and then I go and execute it again. Where are we? Oops, that was the wrong one. Said, okay, open up the window again, execute them again, and then I have 40 of these events coming in. So very straightforward. You then can go and simply subscribe to it. One of the interesting things, replay ID, that's the nature of the platform events. I say -2, replay all the events of the last 24 hours. -1, only start listening now. I don't care for the old events. Or you have a specific number where you can say, okay, I want to replay starting with a specific event. When you look at one of the objects that came through, they all come with a replay ID, which allows you to, like, say, the connectivity was down, you know, the last event that you received, and then you can restart comfortably using the subscription. Standard in Salesforce right now is that events are stored for 24 hours. if you need longer storage, you can actually connect the anything streaming to a Kafka instance on Heroku, and there you can store it as long as you are willing to pay the required storage. Okay, well that's just one of the streaming stuff. When I look at the events, just thought again, you see there's a topic, and in an older version, you had to specify: is it a custom event? Is it the change data capture or whatever? And we changed that and said, okay, you just specify the topic as per documentation in Salesforce, and it will listen to that anyway. So, which brings to the next point, which is pretty cool, is change data capture. Change data capture uses the same node at a streaming node. The only thing is that it goes and says, I'm listening to data change events. And data change events is basically everything that you have specified in your organization to emit an event when data changes. So let's have a quick look at the setup. Oh, developer console there. So this change data capture is in the setup, and you can simply specify what are the objects, and that works both for custom objects as well as standard objects. You want to have change data capture events. You say save, and it runs. So let me try this out. Okay, so I have a little silly one. I have a graph which has no data, because remember, I went here in my change data capture and said -1. I only want to see new stuff coming in. So let me subscribe to it. Oh, and I press the button. It says subscribed. And now I need to go and do some change data capture, some changes. So let me go and look at my opportunities. So I go, just open up an opportunity, and I simply says, okay, the stage changed, which then fires off a change event. So I look at my UI, and it says, okay, based on the revenue, it starts pulling the graph. But one value doesn't make a graph, so we need to change a little bit more. Oops. No. Okay. So I go back to my opportunity. I use another one. I said, okay, that progresses nicely. And then I use another one. Okay, that takes a moment. Let's say up. And when I look at my back at my dashboard, I see that, like, say, how the total value of my my closure per hour changes. So this graph comes out of the box. Just to give you an idea, say this is just a flow chart. I said, okay, it's a line chart. It has a label, and we pump in the data. So the aggregation by time is automatically done by NodeRED. And there you have line chart, bar chart, pie chart, polar chart, radar chart, or whatever. And so you can build with change data capture and NodeRED a little dashboard very rapidly. Yep, that's pretty much what I would like to demo for the time being. A few things to wrap up. One of the things what typically asked is, how does it happen with the dashboard? You have these different menu items, and they show up. Where is it configured? You just showed us there is nodes, like there's a button node. It doesn't tell anywhere where it is. And there the thing is, you have on the right hand side, that's, I think I say here, look at this one. That's the area where we need to look out. And there is the tab with the dashboard, and there you have basically the layout. You can have they have home, control center, money flow. These are the 3 tabs. And the 4th one is actually an external link, and all the dashboard elements show up, and then you can just go and drag and drop them around. So for instance, I said, okay, actually, I like to have the form stuff in front of the dashboard. The form stuff in front of the dashboard magic. I just drag them up, hit deploy, and it will then update my dashboard. One of the things, just for the use cases, that's a very typical thing. I have tons of these when I work with clients. A mock endpoint, a static piece of code, which from their Swagger file or whatever, and then just return some JSON. And this way, I can simulate an endpoint without thinking a lot about it. There are nodes available actually that take a Swagger definition file and generate the endpoints for you. Okay. Yep. That's pretty much it. Let me just show you quickly the NodeRED website. So that's NodeRED.org. There they have this nice little introduction, which is probably much better explained than I would be able to do that. And the little bit more details on the architecture, Node.js and the likes. But the more interesting one is when you click on flows. This is the library, and as I said, they have 1,200 flow example and about 2,000 over nodes. So for instance, I said, okay, I want to look at Marketing Cloud. So marketing, and there are a bunch of them. Or I said I want to look at Salesforce. So I see a bunch of nodes that connect to Salesforce. This is the one which we just looked at, the NodeRED contribute Salesforce. So you need to click on it, and it will explain how it works in detail. As I said, I currently maintain them. It's good fun to do that. Okay, let's go back to the deck. It was that. Okay. Okay, present. There you go. So to sum it up, we see I can go databases. I have HTTP, any type of input and output. I have 2,034 nodes that I could use. The challenge is a little bit where to pull them, and not where to pull them. Which one are good? It runs everywhere: Windows, Linux, Mac, Heroku, AWS, Google, Azure, a Raspberry Pi, on your QNAP, on your Synology, on an IBM mainframe, whatever you want. One little caveat when you want to, a little bit about the use cases. So I've seen, like, say, mock API endpoints, connecting the Salesforce to pull data in and out, save it to database, transform and forward. There are nodes that talk to, for instance, to SMTP. So you wanna have a message send out and you hit your daily send limits. You could use deploy that on Heroku and just continue. Connect to IoT, forward and backward. Prototype custom actions. The screenshots, what you see right now, that is actually a custom action in Marketing Cloud. So we had a very specific problem that wasn't solved. So I could, in a very short time, after understanding how it works, create a custom action that shows up in the Marketing Cloud and solve the action. Quick dashboards. You've seen how easy it is to create a dashboard and to make real-time data available. The only limitation you have for the whole thing is your imaginations, and if you're short of that, watch a few more Barney videos. They sort that out usually. NodeRED on Heroku. The nice little thing is it works out of the box. Of course, if you try read an I/O port on NodeRED, that's not going to fly. That's something you want to use on Raspberry Pi. The biggest one is the runtime in Heroku, or by the way, in AWS or Bluemix or whatever, is Epidemo. So whenever a NodeRED node is restarted, anything that you saved in the online file system gets reset to the original state. And NodeRED, out of the box, loads its flows from a flow.js file. And on the deck, I gave the command which I use to run my NodeRED on Heroku. And I found the easiest one is I do the flow design local, and then just do a git push to Heroku, and then the flows restart properly on the properly with Heroku and the runtime. What's currently in progress, you can go and store flows in GitHub. Now, so NodeRED can go and load and save flows to GitHub. What isn't sorted out yet is to say, when you start, please connect to GitHub first, pull down the flow, and then restart it. So that's something the NodeRED team is working on. Other typical question that come up, can I secure NodeRED? So the answer is yes. So you can either hardcode an encrypted password in your configuration for the admin access, or you can connect it to a single sign-on. So that is working, and you can use anything anything that is available for Node.js. So you said, okay, but for accessing any of the dashboards or endpoints, I want to have whatever bearer authentication. I want to have present a certificate or whatever. You can use the modules that are available in Node.js to do so. So you start it simple, but you can, let's say, it doesn't stop you from getting very sophisticated. There's much more, like say we're coming to an end. You can create your own nodes. Say one of the first nodes I built was a Enigma. I'm German, so I rebuilt what they used in the Second World War for encryption. It was quite funny. You can run it headless. They said, okay, I run the admin client on my local workstation, but the runtime is running somewhere in the cloud. And I've showed you the resources NodeRED and the flows. The details on the Heroku stuff is available on my blog. There is a link to it. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say. So the question is, do we have any questions? Ami, do we have anything coming up, or is everybody happy?
Yeah, I can see there are 2 questions from Jitendra Jha in the chat window. So would you like to answer for that?
Let me see, where do I see the chat window? It doesn't show me the chat window. As long as I share, okay, let me for a short moment stop sharing the screen so I can have a look at the chat window. Okay. So the first question is there practical usages? So decision-making flow is one of them. Most of the time when you want to integrate to something external, I don't see a use case where you said you have something that is completely on platform and then you go out to NodeRED and come back. But when you said, okay, I have a decision-making flow that needs to talk to some other systems as well, that's a good way of using NodeRED. It's kind of middleware ultra-light, no? So you could say, well, we have a MuleSoft in place. You probably don't need NodeRED. But what I've seen it is lightweight connections to other systems, simple dashboards and entry forms, and a lot of prototyping. So the second question is we use. I'm not familiar with Unman.
So there's
okay.
a username and password flow.
Okay. So the callback, the underlying library that is used in NodeRED to talk to Salesforce is the NForce 8 library, which is a slightly modernized version of the NForce library, and that does an OAuth authentication. So you need to configure a connected app on your Salesforce instance, and in the initial process, you need to have the callback URL once. But I realized that's one of the things which is a bit funny about the OAuth stuff. Once you have the initial connection, then you don't need it anymore. One of the things that I think, talking about authentication, one of the things I was toying around with, I'm looking after the NForce 8 library as well, is to add a JWT authentication. And another thing what you can do is today when you call out to NodeRED, nothing stops you from sending over a session token for Salesforce, and NodeRED could then go and add this as a authentication bearer header when it talks back to Salesforce. So you could then say the callback is in the ID of the user who originally called the NodeRED flow. Or the other one is, as I said, JWT. I'm a little bit hesitant because once an external application has a JWT authenticatable connection to Salesforce, it can impersonate basically every user that has this that has the permission of API connection. Okay, so that's it for the questions. So let me share back the screen. Okay.
In the meantime, anybody? I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
So a little call to action, of course. So one is like, go and play with it, give it a spin. It is the whole project is on GitHub, so you can go and open a ticket or give them the feedback, and let's say what should be next. So one of the things I was thinking about, integrating the REST API, so you can do bulk updates, integrating the tools API. So I'm very open to suggestions, because like I say, multiple brains think more qualified than just one brain. And then if you give it a hack and say, well, like I say, I really like this function and I really like to make it myself, I'm happy taking pull requests as well. Okay, that's it. Any more questions?
Thank you so much, Stephen, for the great session. Guys, if you have any question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question directly.
Yes, Stephen, thanks. It's a great session. Good introduction to NodeRED.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for the great session. It's a new learning for me as well.
Okay, anyway, I say if you have ideas, questions, my contact details are on the slide. Feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to future topics. How about, like, say, Java talking to Salesforce?
Yeah, we can plan that one.
Okay. Anyway, Amit, you want to quickly announce what's coming up in Apex hours for the next sessions?
Yeah, so I will wrap up, and in the email I will share the next session. So we are good for now. And thank you so much, Stephen, for taking the session even like late night. I know it is like 11 p.m. for you. 11 p.m. right?
Yep, I just get going.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for a great session, and thank you everyone for the joining.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.